You ready?
Yeah, sorry.
You got a little time yet. You got about a minute. If
Got a
you're,
few seconds.
That was a private businessman who's talking to a client of mine, and I needed to touch base with him.
okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Southern Shores Council meeting for September 7th. Mayor Tom Bennett is not able to be with us this evening. He asked me to convey his regrets to each and every one of you. And he hopes that the current medical issue that he's dealing with will be resolved soon, and he will be back with us as soon as possible. If you'll all please stand now for a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks very much. During our moment of silence here in a second, I was given some information today about a longtime town resident, Al Uerling, who is currently in the hospital up in Chesapeake. And I hope that you will keep Al in your thoughts. If you'll just join me now in a short moment of silence. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add also that finally Paul Capanos passed away. That was a sad story for Southern Shores. But anyway, sorry to interrupt.
It's okay. Thank you. So do we have any amendments or changes to our agenda?
Ask for one thing.
Yes, sir.
If I could, please. You have under your consent agenda a resolution opposing the proposed designation of critical habitat for the roofer red knot. That there's still the Congress here, our representatives have sent a letter to Fish and Wildlife asking for more time, asking them to take more time before they designate this habitat. And so I think we may be a little premature in putting this. It may not come to pass. So I'd ask that you remove this and table it to another time when we have a little bit clearer picture of what it means.
Thank you. Any objections, council members?
No, I don't have any.
So we're going to remove item 2 under consent agenda.
Agenda.
Other than that change to the agenda, is everyone okay with the minutes and the number 3 resolution?
Yeah, I move that we approve the consent agenda and removing item 2 and including item 1 and 3.
And I'll second that motion.
Any discussion further? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We have an agenda. At this time, I'd like to hand over the meeting to our Chief Cole.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council.
No. Mayor Pro Tem, thank
Mayor
you.
Pro Tem.
Thank you.
It's my honor and my privilege to acknowledge Deputy Chief John Slagle for his 20 years of service. I would like to have him, his wife Miha, and their son Ethan, if they would come up front. No pressure. Stand right up there in front of all of them. can too.
He knows where to go.
He's not shy. Just to give you a little background on John, he's been married to Miha, his wife, for 16 years. They have their son, Ethan, who's 9. John was born and raised in New Jersey, and we still hired him. He moved to North Carolina in 1995 after finishing college to attend the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. Then he also to move closer to his parents who had retired and lived in Southern Shores for an awful long time. Started his career with the Edenton Police Department in 1996. I had shoes that were older than that when he started there. He was promoted, he was hired in Southern Shores in 2001, and he was promoted to sergeant in 2007. And then he was promoted to lieutenant in 2014 and now serves as our deputy chief for the Southern Shores Police Department. It's my honor and privilege to acknowledge and give him his certificate of appreciation for the 20 years that he has served with the town of Southern Shore. Thank you. We'll be right back. We're going to take pictures without our masks on.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate all you do for our town. Thanks for coming, Ethan. Next on our agenda are staff reports. If we could hear from Mr. Wes Haskett, our Deputy Town Manager and Planning Director. Hey, Wes.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I have a brief report for y'all tonight for the month of August. There were a total of 42 permits issued, 10 zoning permits. They consisted of 10 zoning permits, 11 building permits, 3 lot disturbance and stormwater management permits, and 18 trade permits. The total amount of fees collected in August was $11,846.50. With respect to the Town Planning Board, they will be meeting here on August 14th at 5:30 to participate in an online UNC School of Government Legislative Zoning Decisions Workshop. The board will hold its regular meeting on September 20th at 5:30. The purpose of the meeting is to continue discussing ZTA 2108, a zoning text amendment application submitted by the town to amend Town Code Section 36-165 signage. The board will also discuss potential requirements for produce stands in the commercial zoning district and potential amendments to Town Code Chapter 26, solid waste, time permitting. Any questions?
I don't have any.
Thank you, Wes. Appreciate it.
Might need to move.
We'll go with Chief Limbacher since our police chief has stepped outside for a second. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
So for the month of August, the fire department responded to 3 structure fires, 1 cooking fire, 1 passenger vehicle fire, 42 EMS calls, 3 motor vehicle accidents, 1 elevator rescue, 2 surf rescues, 1 each of hazardous condition, gas leak, electrical problem, 9 service calls, 1 lockout, 1 public service, 1 authorized burn, 9, 1 CO, for a total of 81 for the month of August. Questions?
How does that compare to last August?
It's slower. Last year was 101.
Ooh,
So a little slower this year.
that's good.
How's everybody holding up under the heat?
Yeah, they're happy to, it's September, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
that. So things are well.
good.
Have any questions?
Thank you,
Alrighty.
sir. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Appreciate all y'all do for us.
Thank you.
We'll just go on with town manager report, if that's okay, Cliff.
Thank you. First, I wanted to start off with a update on the beach nourishment project. You've got a couple items on your agenda later to address what happened last Thursday. We opened the bids at the county admin building on Thursday. We only, I think, 4 companies in the U.S. were able to bid on these projects. We had 3 of those companies, Great Lakes, Weeks, and Manson Marine, each bid on the project, with Weeks Marine being the low bid. Weeks has done work here. They did work down in Buxton. I'm not sure if they've worked in other places, but Great Lakes has done a majority of the work. But Great Lakes came in for our project, a cubic yard cost of $9. Great Lakes was at $9.80 and Manson was at $13. The big difference, I think, was the mobilization and the demobilization between Great Lakes and Weeks. Weeks was at $5 million and Great Lakes was at 8.5. So the low bid for this project is Weeks Marine. At total for all 4 projects is $27,932,500. For our portion of this project, what we've been told all along is that we have to have our equivalent 7.52 cents skin in the game, and that doesn't change. If the price of this project had gone over, we'd have to come up with that difference or make a decision whether or not we put less sand on the beach. If it came in under budget, the Dare County occupancy, those funds would go back into Dare County occupancy. And for our project, that's going to be about $4 million. So we got a letter today, a recommendation from our engineer, Ken Wilson, to County Manager Bobby Alton, recommending that the county move forward with the notice to award, but there are some conditions that still need to be met before they can proceed. Of course, we have to get approval from the local government commission to borrow the funds. We have to get the CAMA major and DEQ and the core permits are still outstanding. And then we also have to execute a lease between Dare County and the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, as our borrow area for this project is in federal waters. But you've got a couple of things on your agenda that'll address this, but I did want to share that the good news is the town's budget stays the same, but we have a project that we're going to be able to do with what we expected the cost to be, at least for the town's portion of that. So the town's rate is in line with this budget. At Duck's town council meeting last week, if you look up, you'll see where that blue arrow is. That starts in the southern end of Duck. There's about 12 properties in Duck that are in our taper. Our northern end of our project tapers 12 properties into Duck. So we're going to have to get easements from those properties in order to do this project. Last Tuesday, I think Duck met. I'm not sure what day of the week they meet, but it was last week. They approved the easement form and they approved the going after these grants jointly with us. So that the easements will be written both to the Southern Shores and to Duck. I'm going to bring that easement back to you all just so you can see it and approve it. And their town manager and I will pursue those easements. Any questions on that? I did want to bring up the tax bills and how beach nourishment are showing up on these. And Mr. Ferretti is here, and I think he's going to speak to this. He's actually kind of is the reason I'm talking about this now. But really it's the property, the DMV bill that folks are going to start getting from now until the end of the year. But you'll see for most folks who aren't in an MSD, their tax bill showed up like this. It showed up with Southern Shores Beach Nourishment. If you see the way we did this, the 19.58 cents was the town tax rate before the Beach Nourishment project. And we purposely took out the 4 cents that are going towards the beach nourishment. But effectively, the town tax rate is 23.58 cents, but we broke it out differently. It gets, and that's for anyone not an MSD. If you go to the next one, you'll see it gets a little more question generating if you live in an MSD. You'll see, this is for someone on the ocean front. If you add those three up, the Southern Shores being beach nourishment, that's 4 cents everybody pays. And then the MSD 1 and 2, that's the total rate. There's been some questions as to why am I getting double tax for beach nourishment, but it's divided like that because of the requirements for the special obligation bond. But when you all set these rates, you did it at MSD 1, intending it to be 10.15 cents. But it has to be broken out that way because those folks are in two MSDs. Really, what the next one, you'll see when folks get their vehicle tax, they'll see that beach nourishment is broken out on that as well. Ordinarily, I think Kitty Hawk's the only one that does this other than us. Ordinarily, all you would have seen was 23.58 cents and the $73.27 total. But because we broke it out the way we did, because we wanted folks to see, trying to be transparent that this is what everyone's paying towards beach nourishment, it showed up here as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and explain the reason. This isn't a double tax. It's just shows that it's broken out. Okay. Traffic. I want to start with this. I've had some folks ask, when I give these reports, and I won't regurgitate things that I've stood up here and shared before, but I haven't shared this. Had some folks that have said, what do we do to generate some interest beyond? How do we take the energy that we have and affect some sort of change? Who do we contact? And it was suggested to me that we start sending emails and notices to Congressman Greg Murphy in hopes of getting his attention. I mean, our state representatives are on board with this bridge and they support this bridge. But the lawsuit ties their hands. But there may be some things that our congressmen, U.S. congressmen, may be able to generate. So we'll put this in the next newsletter and we'll try and start getting some attention this way. I did want to briefly wrap up the traffic for the summer. Last time I stood up here, you had decided we should not do the no left turn the last 2 Sundays out of the 10. And I wanted to share the results of that. The last, excuse me while I pull this up, the last Sunday that we did a no left turn was August the 8th, and we had, on South Dogwood, we had 1,556 cars. The next Sunday, without a left-hand turn, we had 1,065. So we had less cars, but we actually had more cars come through town. And then the following weekend, with even less cars, on the following weekend, we had 1,217 cars. So at least on that Sunday, it didn't seem to have a large impact. What did, I think, have an impact was at the same time, we took the barricades down. And I think, as frustrating as those barricades got to folks that live here and they had to drive around every weekend, and I think they did have some benefit. The first weekend we took those barricades down, particularly on Sea Oats, the properties at the 200 block and 300 block of Sea Oats, they went from 939 cars on average to 1,600 without a barricade. And at the 300 block, from 2,400 cars to 3,000 cars without a barricade. So I think there's some merit to that. I think you all know that Duck is doing some work now with a contractor to do some monitoring and counting of their crosswalks. And I talked emailed with their town manager today, and once they get some more information and have a little bit better understanding of what they're dealing with, and we've had some time to go through these numbers a little bit better, probably be a good idea to sit down with them. It's been quite a while since I think we all kind of sat and decided, at least share what each other's doing, what each other's learned, and what we might be able to do together. So at some point in the near future, I think that's something that we ought to do. And the only other thing I wanted to report is on the electric, and I won't give these numbers every time. I'll do this one time. The electric vehicle charger that's out front, we got that installed on August the 19th, and so far, we've had 5 vehicles use it. Two of those used it twice, so I'm hoping that we can increase the use of that. Things that I want to bring back, just to kind of put on your plate to consider, I got to bring those easements back. We still need to discuss the SEPI report. Staff and I are going through this and trying to figure out how we might take the maintenance plan that they put together, their 2 options, and add a little bit of cost for construction. So we need to bring that back to you. Also at the October meeting, I'd like to discuss police salaries. We've fallen pretty severely in starting salaries for police officers. It's having an impact. We've had an opening now since October, and we're losing ground on as soon as we did a study and implemented it, within a year later, we're about $4,000 below the starting salary of other jurisdictions. So, and that's a significant difference. So I need to bring to you all a plan for how we can address that, because it is a concern. And then, I don't know if this is appropriate time or not to ask, but I'd like to ask you all to consider rescheduling your November council meeting. Election day is on the 2nd, so you'd already moved it to the 3rd, which is a Wednesday, but 3 of us are going to the North Carolina Beach and Inlet Waterways meeting. And this is something maybe you consider at the end of the meeting, but I'd like to request that that meeting, regular meeting that would normally be on the 2nd, that got moved to the 3rd, now be on the 9th. And, maybe at the end of the meeting, that's something you can consider doing, but that would require a motion. That's it for me.
Anybody have any questions for Cliff?
Would it work to move that meeting to 9 o'clock, or can we do that?
If we moved it to November 9th, I would say we keep it at 5:30. Would be a week
I'm
later.
sorry, what was that?
Move it to November the 9th, the following Tuesday that you would normally meet, but leave the time at 5:30.
Well, then I'd like to make a motion that we move that regular November meeting to November 9th at 5:30.
I'll second it.
Would that probably be the only meeting for November?
Yes, I think so.
Because Thanksgiving comes up pretty
Right,
quick.
right,
That's right.
fine.
Yeah, I think you could have one meeting.
I'm smiling.
That's your line?
No, I said I'm smiling.
Oh, you're smiling.
You can't see.
Okay.
You can
Okay,
see,
so-
you can see it in your eyes.
We have a motion for changing our November meeting from the 3rd to the 9th at 5:30. Do I have a second?
I thought Matt
I
seconded.
second
Oh, I'm
it.
sorry, you seconded. Is there any further discussion?
No, I don't have any.
Okay,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're going to move the meeting.
thank you.
Cliff, before you get away, I'd
Yes,
like
sir.
to make a comment, though. I hope that I am wrong, but I am predicting that if we get everybody in town to email Mr. Murphy and they get that bridge, the Mid-Currituck Bridge, on schedule and done real quickly, I don't think that's going to solve our cut-through traffic problem. I have said it before, and I think there's a tremendous number of people making a right turn onto South Dogwood coming from that 64 corridor from Manio. So that's not a reason not to email Mr. Murphy and get that Currituck Mid-County, the bridge built. But I don't think that that's going to solve the problem unto itself. Anyway, I just want to get that out, not as much for your sake, because I've told you that before, but for the public's sake.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cliff. Just to wrap up that section of the agenda, do we have anything from our attorney?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Police Chief Cole?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. August 2021, police report. Calls for service, we had 1,567 calls for service. Compared to last year, that's down about 306. Most of those were business checks and property checks. Under the incidents, which are actually the crimes reported, we had 16. The highlight of that is 13 of those were for drugs, with a total of 24 total charges. Under the arrest, we had 7 criminal arrests for a total of 14 charges. 10 of those were all drug-related. Under the citations, as you can see on the pie chart, there were 92 traffic stops for the month of August. And out of those traffic stops, they issued 22 written citations with a high of 40, and 21 of those were for speeding, and 14 of those were for stop sign violations. And that was a total of 61 total charges. Under the local ordinance, we had 134 tickets issued mostly for failing to display. You will see that number drastically go down as our community resource officer winds down and goes to Raleigh for college. Any other questions?
That failure to display, is that using the
Yes.
parking lot still? They don't have their proper tags?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Cole. Appreciate it very much. At this time, we would have general public comment. That means you would have had to sign up on the sheet. Anybody needs to sign up on the sheet, there it is.
Gone now.
Okay, here we go. And first speaker is Ed Klismar.
Thank you for having me. Just a quick problem that we have. We're non-resident property owners, been here 40 years, had a couple of properties in Southern Shores. Our cottage is at 174 Duck Road. We're between Trout Run and Dolphin. The sidewalk is on the west side of the Duck Road. We are on the ocean side of the Duck Road. So we have no sidewalk, okay? The problem is since we're in the interior of the lot, we have no beach access without walking on the Duck Road. Problem is that there's no access to walk on the Duck Road without literally being on the Duck Road. And we're afraid at this point that we may have some issues because back in the old days, there were plenty of areas that you could get to the beach. Getting tighter and tighter with more people down here. The property owners don't like other people walking through their property. So we are landlocked and we have to have an access to the beach. We're on the northern end of the property. So we only have one lot to walk before we get to Dolphin, then have direct beach access. Question is, I have some pictures and I talked to Cliff Ogburn. He suggested we come to this meeting. I gave him a letter indicating what our problems are, and he suggested it may help to come here. The road that we have to walk on is not paved, and the shrubbery is at a point where you can't actually pass without literally being able to touch the Duck Road in the cars. So the question is, what do I do about this? So I'm asking if there's any way that we can get some kind of permanent walkway. And I know, and we're not the only people that are involved because all the houses in the interior of that area, plus the area before that, we had a house on Trout Run at one time, all have the same issue. And if anybody gets hit with a car going by in that Duck Road, be prepared for a great lawsuit. And I'm suspecting it'll be maintenance issues or negligence or whatever. So my question is, and why I'm here is, how do I go about getting some action to get the shrubbery cut back and some kind of a permanent sidewalk or walkway on that side of the Duck Road?
Oh, we don't.
So if there's anything that we can do to support it, I don't know where it goes from here. We just spoke to Cliff a little while ago. As I said, I sent him a letter, I sent him some pictures, and he basically thinks that, I think he's indicating that it's a Department of Transportation issue as far as cleaning the shrubbery and cleaning the area and making it accessible so that there's a walkway for the houses that are interior of these lots. So that's my spiel, okay?
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your comments.
I have a letter and I have pictures if anybody needs it.
Vince Ferretti?
My name is Vince Ferretti. I live at 296 Wax Myrtle. I rise to discuss the impact of the beach nourishment assessment. And first, I want to commend the members of the council. I've spoken to a couple of members of the council, including the mayor and the manager, about this. They recognize this as an issue. The reason there are 3 levels of taxing is because the benefit derived from the nourishment is greater on the properties close to the beach. And as you go back, the benefit is much less, so it's reduced tax. I commend the council for being open and set forth that this is a tax not only on real property, but on personal property. A lot of the towns don't do that, and the residents have no idea that they're paying on personal property as well as real property. There are 3 levels because the benefit is different. This rationale applies actually to this situation. This is a tax on vehicles. And the more, if the rationale is the more increase you get in value of your property, the more you should pay. My car doesn't increase in value by beach sand. The nexus to personal property really doesn't exist. So, well, I understand it's an ad valorem tax, and this tax really penalizes those of us who live here and register our cars here. If you own a house on the beach and you live in Virginia or somewhere in Western North Carolina or anywhere else except Southern Shores or the beach area, you don't pay a tax on your cars, but we do. So I think that's a penalty that we're paying. I understand that the North Carolina statutes may command this inequity, but it's a statute, and we can change statutes. And what I'm going to ask the council to do is support asking our legislators in Raleigh to change the statute when it comes to beach nourishment, so it will only apply to real property and not the personal property, which doesn't benefit at all from beach nourishment. I thank you for the time that you've given us, and I want to say I commend you for trying to push the bridge, which certainly helped on my street. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Ferretti. Andy Ward?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem.
Good
Council.
evening, Andy.
147 Bayberry Trail. I kind of am sitting up here as just a regular private citizen, which I am, but I also happen to be chairman of the planning board. And Wes and Cliff and I have briefly spoke tonight. I'm gonna start off talking about signs and what we're getting ready to get into at our next town council meeting. And Wes, I'm hoping it's 5 rather than 5:30. I think we had talked about a 5 o'clock start because it is going to be a lengthy process to go through and clean up and rearrange the sign ordinance. But anyway, as an observation, going through town today, I was riding my bike before I came up here. I've seen a campaign sign or two, and I just want to reiterate and implore those of you that are running for council, and there are at least 3 here tonight that I can see that are running for election here in Southern Shores. And, you know, if you got to rely on volume and getting them out earlier than everybody else, then maybe you're hitting the wrong crowd. I don't know. But just for point of reference, the NC State statute for the allowance of political signs is in the right-of-way of their roads, and it's been held to, for most candidates here running for offices, 30 days prior to the start of one-stop early voting, which would equate to September 14th. And then the Dare County, which is very antiquated, doesn't even take into account early voting, says 6 weeks prior to. So that would put Dare County at September 21st. So anyway, I mean, the number of people that, 99.99% of us that aren't running for office, we don't necessarily want to see those campaign signs any sooner than we have to. And I would just hope that we can follow the right-of-way issue that Cliff Ogburn is going to probably weigh in on a little bit after I talk. And we can control it in Southern Shores. We just can't control it on the state right-of-ways. So anyway, if anybody wants to come and sit and be bored at a meeting, come and weigh in on some sign stuff, because there's plenty there. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for all the time that you devote to volunteering with our planning board. I really appreciate it. The town is better for it. Thank you. That's all we have for public comment. I don't believe we have any old business that I know of. So I'm now going to turn over the meeting to our town attorney for the first item under new business, a public hearing. SPA 2101, a site plan amendment application submitted by Aston Properties to amend the site plan for the Marketplace Shopping Center. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. This is an administrative public hearing for a site plan amendment application submitted by Ashton Properties to amend the site plan for the Marketplace Shopping Center. I will have first Mr. Haskett provide a overview of the application and the project. Then I'll have the applicant have an opportunity to speak, and then members of the public who have signed up will have an opportunity to speak. And if there are other members, I will check at the end of going through the list to see if there's anyone else who would like to speak to this public hearing. So I'll open the public hearing, and I'll have Mr. Haskett come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Gallup. Good evening again. The next item on your agenda tonight is consideration of SPA 2101. The applicant is Aston Properties, and the requested action is site plan amendment application submitted by Aston Properties to amend the site plan for the Marketplace Shopping Center. Its location is at 5500 North Croatan Highway. Its zoning is C, General Commercial. Its existing land use, as determined by the town's currently adopted land use plan, is commercial. With respect to surrounding land use and zoning, to the north is residential, RS1, single-family residential district. To the south, Highway 158, Town of Kitty Hawk jurisdiction. And to the east and west, both commercial, C, General Commercial District. Physical characteristics are that it's developed, it's existing group development per the town zoning ordinance. Applicable regulations from the town zoning ordinance include Article 3, interpretation and definition of terms. Article 4, application of regulations. Article 6, general provisions. Article 7, schedule of district regulations. And Article 10, administration and enforcement. Sheila, if you don't mind, can you bring up, it's the third PDF down from the top? And then go to, say, let's try the third or fourth page, so everyone can see it on the screen while I'm going here, if they're not familiar with it already. No, continue. That's the existing conditions. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Yes. Thank you. Staff's analysis is that the applicant seeks an amendment to the site plan for the Marketplace Shopping Center by demolishing a portion of one building and construction of a new 24,000 square foot Marshalls, a new 6,000 square foot retail space for a business to be determined, and other parking lot modifications. The proposed parking lot modifications include the use of permeable pavers in order to be eligible for a maximum lot coverage of 67% instead of 60%. Currently, the proposed lot coverage is at 67.1%, shown on the plan on the screen. As of September 1st, we have not received enough documentation to determine the permeability of the proposed pavers, which could affect the square footage of permeable pavers required. The proposed signage for Marshalls includes 3 wall signs, 1 under canopy sign, and 1 nameplate on the freestanding sign, which are in compliance with the town's sign requirements. There are 150 proposed parking spaces, with 102 of them being permeable, and a total of 613 parking spaces for the site, which are in compliance with the town's parking requirements. A lighting plan and required documentation have also been provided that demonstrate compliance with the town's outdoor lighting requirements. With respect to recommendation, the town land use plan identifies this area as commercial and the C General Commercial Zoning District, which is consistent with the improvements proposed in the application. All applicable regulations of the town zoning ordinance and all of town staff's concerns that are applicable to this application have been identified or are addressed in the recommended conditions. Town staff recommends conditional approval of the application, and the town planning board unanimously recommended conditional approval of the application at the August 16, 2021 planning board meeting. Both recommend the following conditions. Number 1, the following approvals shall be submitted or issued prior to submittal of a building permit application. A, soil erosion sedimentation control plan permit for land disturbance over 1 acre as issued by the NCDEQ. B, stormwater management permit as issued by the NCDEQ. C, wastewater approval by the Dare County Health Department. We have received the final approval, the actual permit from the Dare County Health Department, and we've received the permit as well, or the approval as well from the NC Department of Health and Human Services. D, review and approval of potable water distribution system modifications or extensions by the Dare County Water Department. We've received tentative approval of from them as well, which is required by the ordinance. Recommended condition number 2, the lot coverage shall be reduced to not exceed 67% prior to submittal of a building permit application. This is instead of 67.1%. Recommended condition number 3, documentation showing the proposed permeable paver product and its permeability shall be submitted prior to submitting a submittal of a final or a building permit application. Recommended condition number 4, the applicant must strictly abide by all requirements of the town code and must also strictly comply with all other applicable local, state, and federal requirements. And lastly, recommended condition number 5, prior to issuance of a building permit, the town engineer and the applicant's representative shall evaluate the existing stormwater system for glaring deficiencies and address them. You all received all the documents and items pertaining to this site plan review in your packets. If you all have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them at this time. The town engineer, Joe Anloff, is also present. If there are any technical questions or anything I can't answer or anything related to the stormwater system, I'm sure he'd be glad to try to answer those for you as well.
Are there any questions for Mr. Haskett?
Has the applicant had any comments on these requirements, the recommendations?
At the planning board, the recommended, you talking about are referring to the conditions?
Yes.
At the planning board, there were conditions, recommended conditions 1 through 4. At the planning board meeting, the planning board came up and recommended or added condition number 5. I have not heard any objections at this point, but you can ask them when they come to speak.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Haskett?
Yes, one. Is there engineer's representative for Aston or the developer of Marshalls in the audience tonight?
Yes, sir, she is.
I'd like to ask them, do they know if the stormwater outfall into the canal is a reverse slope invert elevation?
I'm sure,
I mean, how forward thinking were they back in the 1980s?
I'm sure she'd be glad to answer that for you.
They're going to have an opportunity
They
to
have
come
an
up in just a
opportunity to
minute.
speak.
They
Councilman
do
Combs.
not?
They
will
do.
come up in a minute.
Oh, okay, great. Well, please keep that question in mind. Who is that person? Can you raise your hand? Oh, okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Haskett?
On condition 5, how are you determining a glaring deficiency?
That's the language that was suggested by the planning board and that went forward.
I mean, if they meet 1.5 inches, I mean, there's a standard in the ordinance already, right?
The 1.5 is the standard in the ordinance, yes, sir. And then whatever state requirements they'll have to meet, if any, per the soil erosion sedimentation control plan permit or the stormwater management permit.
Do you see any glaring deficiencies?
I have not, but I'm not an engineer. I don't know if Mr. Randolph has noticed any, but
I meant, I guess I was asking Joe.
Maybe.
I believe that language of glaring deficiency was a physical deficiency in the infrastructure itself,
Okay.
meaning that if there was a crack in a drop inlet or a way in which stormwater could short circuit the treatment process and get directly to the canal, like a, grout missing from a pipe connection. So it was not a calculation deficiency. I don't believe there's any proof that the entire system can handle a certain design storm because of the age of the system. It's just going through, condition 5 was myself and Ms. Hamby going through and making sure there wasn't any failure or failing of that infrastructure. That's all that was.
And you'll hold up issuing the building permit until that meets your standard? I'm just trying to figure out how you can grade it. Okay.
Well, I got another question for you, Joe. What do the state rules say about something that was built 30 years ago or 20-something years ago about adhering to today's current standards?
So the project is most likely eligible for an exemption from stormwater permitting because they're not adding 10,000 square feet of new impervious coverage. And the existing stormwater system predated the issuance of stormwater permits for development projects.
Right.
I can tell you that in my professional opinion, at the time, it was very forward-thinking because it requires the stormwater to infiltrate through the sand, like a sand filter, before it enters a perforated pipe and goes to a box and then is discharged. There's no, in the old days, I started doing this in 1996, we used to dig a hole in the ground and say, well, that hole has surplus capacity for the storm, and that was it. Now we do vegetated shelves and forebays and wetland species and all kinds of calculations of, the amount of rain intensity that a device can mitigate. So it was pretty forward thinking at the time, and it appears to be in good shape. I mean, we have to go through and look at it and take a look at it, but
So I guess what I'm asking you then is, do you envision a drastic rework of the storm drainage system based on today's standards?
I do not. I think that, in all likelihood, the stormwater section is going to issue a letter saying that this project is exempt from retroactively trying to comply with the stormwater rules.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for me?
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
No.
Any further questions from council for Mr. Haskett or Mr. Enlow?
I don't have any.
And I'll call the applicant and the applicant's engineer to come and give their presentation.
Good evening. I'm Kim Hamby with Timmons Group. We're the civil engineers for this project. Wes has given you a good overview. Basically, we are demolishing a portion of the buildings that are there now to build a new big box store plus another 6,000 square foot that will be for tenant build out later on. We are actually, in reconfiguring the parking, we're picking up 26 parking spaces, but we are actually reducing the overall impervious coverage from the existing condition of 67.3% to 67.1%. So that's where we're crunching some of the numbers. To add on to what y'all have already discussed with Mr. Anloff about the existing system, I think some of the concern really came from not knowing whether the system was built based on the original design plans. We have topographic information on the pipes from the surveyors that did that, and it does indicate that there's about 4 inches of fall out of the stormwater structure to the canal. There's what happens with the stormwater on this side of the site, not on the eastern side of the site, but on this western side of the site. Everything goes into an underground drainage system that goes out in through the courtyard between the buildings that exists now. And it goes into a storm structure that has 2 chambers. And in the first chamber, there's a wall that keeps the water from going all the way through. And instead, it goes into that first chamber and out through 2 pipes into depressions on either side where the water is temporarily stored. On the other side of that same box, there are perforated pipes that come into it that are under those storage areas. So what happens is the water is discharged out of that first section. It infiltrates through the soil. What can't completely infiltrate runs back into the structure through those perforated pipes, and from there out to the canal. That has not actually been seen by Mr. Anloff. We have opened the manhole lids, we've taken pictures, and can see that the dividing wall is in place, and that the perforated pipes, we can see them on one side, not on the other side, and it was likely just due to water elevation. There was probably 8 to 12 inches of water in the structure when we inspected it. And that's just going to fluctuate. The elevations it was designed to are going to cause there to be some back and forth of the canal water into that first chamber, but not back into the parking lot. And that's just because of our tidal waters. And as the water goes up, sometimes it will flow. It's going to go where it can go. But the pipe is not back graded based on the topographic information I have.
So is it fair to say that the original developers of the marketplace were using low-impact development guidelines decades before that term was coined?
It does appear so. I was rather surprised.
Thanks. I think you answered my question. I know that an as-built survey is required somewhere here in this process, and that'll answer my question on the reverse slopes of the pipes.
Well, that survey work's already been done because that is not something we're proposing now, and that is reflected in the existing condition plans.
Okay, is it a reverse slope pipe?
No, it's not.
Oh,
The
okay.
invert of the structure is shown, and keep in mind, datums have changed over the years, and we like to think of sea level as 0. But the invert of the structure on the outlet end was recorded at a negative 0.2. The invert of the pipe discharging into the canal, I will tell you, trying to read this tiny print, I've got a reduced size. It appears to be negative 0.65. So that would indicate about 4 inches of drop from one to the other.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? from
Yeah, I've
council?
got one, ma'am. How flexible is Marshall's regarding the tree island we have there now? I know it's going.
Yeah,
proposed to go.
unfortunately, they needed those parking spaces directly up against the building. And we are hoping to, we're putting in a really large grassed island out towards the front and trying to replace as much of that as we can. I know we can't replace the old growth, but
So,
that was,
so their business model is not flexible in that area?
no, sir.
Any other questions for council?
No, that's all.
Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Did we have a list? If you can come to the podium and state your name and address. Mary Lou Hoffer. Thank you, Ms. Hoffer. Ms. Hoffer's decided not to speak. Ms. Morrison, Louise Morrison. Thank you. Ms. Morrison's questions have been answered, so she decided not to speak. Brian Hedrick.
My name's Brian Hedrick. I live at 17 Palmetto Lane, which is directly behind the proposed changes to the shopping center. My concern, excuse me?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. My concern is with noise and construction debris. I noticed over the years when a new project has, and I realize this is just a reconfiguration of the existing site, but in other jurisdictions where they've done major big box stores, they had a more sound barrier or something more substantial than a wooden fence that separates our property from the shopping center. And that may have been acceptable 20 years, 25, 30 years ago, whatever it was, that putting up a 10-foot high fence, which is now 8 foot high. It was recently replaced, which we're thankful that that was done. The other one was in disrepair. But just the same, with a big box store coming in there, one could only assume there's going to be more tractor trailers, more frequent deliveries. Frequently, we get trash trucks coming through at 3 o'clock in the morning to dump the dumpsters. I think they want to make sure we're awake because they bang them up and down. But, you know, again, that goes back to noise. And I know when we bought our property, that shopping center, the previous owner moved because of the shopping center. You know, complained about the lights. Lights don't bother us. Again, I'm just concerned about more noise and any construction debris. And I'm certain that there's ordinance presently in place that control the timeframes that they can start construction and cease construction. So I'm not too concerned about that. But I was hoping that quite possibly you might look at a better noise abatement than the wooden fence that's there now for the property owners along there. We looked at a home further up the street, closer to Juniper, and we decided not to purchase that because it's directly behind the food line. And you'll have refrigerator tractor trailers come in there, and they might, if they arrive at a certain time of night, they might run for hours. And the amount of noise that that produces, I can hear them down on the other end of the street in our home. So again, my basic concern is noise and increased traffic, and the fact that a wooden fence doesn't stop noise. It's, again, it was even on the plat that I was looking at, it shows a 12-foot high fence, and the new fence is 8 foot high. Doesn't sound like much, but when you got tractor trailers coming by, you see the top of the lights on the tractor trailers. Again, I'm thankful that they replaced the fence. The old was in disrepair, but with this new construction going on, I think we're going to see a lot more noise, both during construction, demoed construction, and in the future. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Hedrick.
Thank you.
Is anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this public hearing? Going once. I don't see anybody. Ms. Schurzman, please come forward.
Thank you. Hi, Ann Schertzman, 232 North Dogwood Trail. Good evening, everyone. I hesitate to say anything because I think the planning board has done an excellent job with this application. I attended both sessions and they were very thorough. in going through the site plan and examining the stormwater system and putting in place the conditions. But nonetheless, I do have some hesitation, some pause about how this plan squares with our land use plan. And I just wanted to quote a few lines from the 2008 land use plan, including one sentence which is in the vision statement, which I'm sure you've all heard about, the quiet residential community comprised primarily of small low-density neighborhoods. It's hard to talk through cloth. At the very end of that paragraph is, the community is served by a small commercial district located on the southern edge of town, which focuses on convenience, shopping, and services. On page 39 of the same land use plan, is stated, in the next 20 years, commercial development is and is expected to remain limited to small-scale, local convenience shopping and service establishments at the southern boundary of the town. No industrial, agricultural, big box retail and entertainment businesses exist or are desired. I have a problem with the consistency of their plan with our land use plan. That troubles me. I hope we're not looking at a strip mall here in the future. I also would like to echo what Mr. Holland said about the removal of the grove and the park. Seems to me that the need for parking spaces is an insufficient response to your request to try to preserve it. We also are a town that's dedicated to open spaces. And one more negative comment. It disturbs me that we have in the site plan a 6,000 square foot space with no tenant prepared to go in. Are we going to be happy if that tenant turns out to be a Wings? I just think that you need to take into account the land use plan's goals and policies, objectives when you consider a request like this. It's not just a matter of environmental concern, although that's huge, and stormwater runoff. It's also a matter of the vision of the town, the identity, and how we want to serve our residents. And our land use plan of 2008 said definitively, no big box retail. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Karen Partee, and I'm with Aston Properties. I am the owner of the shopping center, or with the company that owns the shopping center. And I just wanted to address a few of the comments that had come up. First of all, we will obviously abide by the requirements as it relates to construction hours. We want to get this building open and operated as quickly as possible. So the length of construction hopefully will be very compressed, but we will do everything we can to make sure that the noise is not an issue. Certainly wouldn't be an issue at sleeping hours. We're not going to be working late at night like that. This is the first I'm hearing about the dumpster service schedule. I will talk with my property manager about that and see what we can do to make sure that those dumpsters aren't being serviced in the wee hours of the morning. But one thing that, and I realize it sort of started with Kim, and that's not her specialty, but this is not a big box. Big box is Walmart, Target, those larger uses. This is considered a junior box. It's a 24,000 square foot use. Usually, the 30, 40,000 square feet and down, that's what you consider that. But this is an opportunity to right size the uses in this shopping center. We currently have, and have had since we purchased the shopping center back in 2014, an abundance of vacancies. And those vacancies are not healthy. When you look at a shopping center that has a large amount of vacancy, you automatically assume there's something wrong with that shopping center. Why does nobody want to be there? Why would I want to shop there? We have an opportunity here to revitalize this center in a significant way that will be a draw for additional local operators to come in and take the rest of the vacancy. And I think this will be a turning point for this shopping center. I've heard your comments with regard to the grassy area, the trees in the front parking lot. It's not only a parking issue, it is a visibility issue. If a national tenant like Marshall's is going to come into a shopping center and occupy the space, they're going to want good signage visibility. They're going to want people to know they're there. And that has been one of the issues with this shopping center, the way that these shops that are on the left side step back as you progress further into the shopping center. I hope nobody here designed this shopping center. I'm going to say, I'm sorry, but it was a bad design. Tenants need to be visible from the road to be successful. You don't drive into a shopping center, do a loop to see if you want to shop there. You count on being able to see from the road who you're going to visit. I know because I've been riding up and down the highway trying to decide where to have dinner for the last couple nights. And I've passed some places because they didn't have good visibility. They were tucked back in a corner or something. They turned out to be a great restaurant, but anyway. But you want that signage to be visible. And so we need those trees down to allow for that visibility to that corner and get success in that shopping center. And I hope that you guys will join in this vision of revitalizing a commercial property within your community, that if it's not, it will just continue to deteriorate, and nobody wants a blighted shopping center. Food Lion does well, but they need some help here. The CVS lease is coming up for renewal. We need them to know that this is a good property that they want to continue to be a part of. We don't want more vacancy here as a result. Thank you very much for your support, and I'm open for any questions you might have.
You have any questions? Since this is the applicant, I'm going to open it up for questions from the council.
No, I don't have any.
Questions, no. Comments will come later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Morrison?
I've lived here, as many of you know, for 30 years or more, better in the town of Southern Shores. And a bit of history. I remember when the marketplace first opened, and at that time it had Daniel's department store, which was very glamorous and had all the usual types of things that a better quality department store had. In addition to that, we had a cinema. We had a very nice restaurant. We had an upscale ladies' dress shop, as well as having, of course, a pharmacy and Food Lion. We had jewelers and craft shops. So having a 24,000 square foot box is actually smaller, I believe, than what Daniel's department store was. And we all loved the marketplace in those days. And sadly, we know that Daniel's went out of business about 2008 because of the crash, the recession, et cetera. So, and the upscale restaurant, in fact, I think there were two, there just wasn't enough business to support them, and so they left, is my understanding. So I have to say that a small box store would indeed help the marketplace and help this community. The marketplace is still a better looking shopping center than Walmart across the street, where I looked and there are just no trees, and Harris Teeter, which is supposed to be upscale, not a tree in their parking lot. They have a nice looking facade, and I would hope that Marshall's would have a good looking facade. But the fact is, I don't think the impact will be very great, but I think the impact on the well-being of the marketplace and this town will be beneficial. And so I do not like that the trees have to be taken out. I'm thinking of a roof garden, that's very fashionable, or a parking lot with a canopy that's got green on top. But I'd like to think there'd be something green living. But I think this town will be the better for having a small box store once again as part of the marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Tricia Fahrenholt, 69 Ocean Boulevard. I also have been a property owner for now 30 years. My goodness. You go up to Duck in Scarborough Fair, you can't see a daggone thing from the road, but it's filled with people buying things. You don't know who's there. So the idea that you don't need to see a giant sign, I disregard entirely. The second is you have the ability to say no. You can say, we would like to keep our trees in Southern Shores. You can say, pull it out 20 feet. You have that ability if you choose to exercise that. These folks want to be here. You might want to give a little firmer guidelines on it because the community likes the trees. They like the way it is. We don't want to look like what's across the street. And I'm afraid that's the way you're heading. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this? I'll close the public hearing and give it back to you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Ben. Council, we have our time to have a discussion. You want to kick us off, Jim?
Yes, there's a couple things I'd like to say. First of all, that's interesting to me about the big box definition, but regardless, I think a Food Lion could be considered a big box definition also. That's a huge department, a huge grocery store. But I've also looked at the trees that are to be removed in order for this project to take place. And I saw sweet gums and pines and a number of trees that, as a landscape architect, I would never plant in a parking lot. So I think the emphasis on the trees lost is a little frustrating to me because they are replacing other trees and reconfiguring the parking lot. And in that reconfiguration of that parking lot, they're taking into account one of the major problems with that marketplace area, and that is they're redoing like a third or a half of the parking lot area. As far as people saying that this should be local businesses, I'd like to point out that we have a Starbucks, a national chain Subway shop, a CVS, a Food Lion, 2 banks, Taco Bell, 2 Farm Bureau or a Farm Bureau Insurance, a Dollar Tree, and 2 real estates. So this small local business thing just doesn't fly with me because the marketplace has for decades been getting other people involved in that. Man, I could go on and on and on, but I think my tendency is to approve this development with the conditions set upon it by the town engineer and or Wes Haskett.
Thanks, Jim. Matt? Any comments?
We don't have any authority over the commercial design standard of the building itself, correct, Wes?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Then my comments are useless.
Okay, Leo?
Yeah, I got a couple of them. One, I'm the one that asked the question about the trees, but I'm also aware of they had, as it stands there now, to access some of those businesses, it's a little bit of a walk for people. My wife, for example, if she goes to the optician, she doesn't park out there in the front. She goes around to the back. Or you get some people that've got some physical challenges, it's tough for them to get from the parking spaces on the other side of that tree line to wherever they're going. So even though I like my trees and understanding that Marshall's business plan is not flexible, then I think we could potentially have a problem. But I think the question we've got to ask ourselves, what do we want there? Do we want a viable commercial area that is thriving and bringing people in? I look at a GIS of the marketplace, then go across the street. I can count the cars in the marketplace versus across the street because it's vibrant. People are there. So do we want a vibrant marketplace, or do we want a marketplace that looks like the old Kmart? And that could happen. If Marshall's decides to say, hey, we're not coming, then where are we? Then we got to start at ground zero. And let's face it, and I don't want to be rude, ma'am, but that marketplace is on life support. Because I look at the investment they made in 2014, what it's valued at now tax-wise, versus the income that's coming in, because there's 11 or 12 stores there or pieces not generating anything. So somewhere in their business model, somebody's going to say, hey, we got to start making some money here, or it's not worth our time doing it. So I think we have, and there's been people asking you, you need to do something, you need to do something. Well, we as public can't do much other than help move this request through the council. So I'm just, because if it becomes what a Kmart looks like down there now, that doesn't send the right image. And Food Lion is going to say, hey, I want a better image than what I'm seeing here. So that's why I'm in favor of moving forward.
Thanks, Leo. I would just like to say thank you, Lilius, for reminding me about the movie theater, because I went to that movie theater
Yeah, so did
before.
I.
And I remember it fondly. And I do remember that nice restaurant there as well, that used to be there years and years ago. I would just say that over the years since Aston took over, Marketplace has really struggled, just like Leo just described. It really has. So do I wish the plan was better? Yeah. Do I wish we could have some influence over more aspects of their proposal? Of course. But I think in general, we're getting something that the town needs, which is a vibrant commercial district. We really, that's something that's good for the town. So I think that's where I stand. Any further discussion, council members?
No, I don't have any.
I could say 100 things in favor of this project, but I'll hold them.
We don't need all night here.
So do I have a motion to move forward with, make sure this is correct. The site plan amendment application submitted by Aston Properties to amend the site plan for the Marketplace Shopping Center.
I'll make the motion to approve the site plan as submitted, along with the conditions as delineated by the town planning director and the planning board.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Can I ask some questions of the owner?
Yes.
What is the proposed start date of the construction if this is permitted?
more than likely, by the time we get our permits, we're gonna be well into the holiday season, and we would not want to start then, so my thought is that we'll probably start in January.
Has final building design been completed?
Is it?
Has final building design been completed?
No, as soon as I hear from you guys that we're a go, I'll be calling the architect and move forward.
Would you care for any input?
The facade has already been approved by the tenant. It is not, it's under lease and can't be changed. I will say, just commentary here, we are planning, we've started a paint scheme along the front of the shopping center, the color wheels, Starbucks wing. We are planning to wrap the entire shopping center with that paint scheme. So this yellow and blue is going away. I hope you don't mind.
Pure white's not a bad color.
This is phase one of what we hope will be another round of renovations in a few years once this starts cash flowing and helping us to really help clean up some of these facades. We recognize that this is not an award-winning project from the design perspective.
Well, I think part of what troubles me is losing the veranda in front of the stores. That's one of the better parts of that shopping center. I mean, I remember when it was Fast Eddie's was in the corner, and just walking down through there was one of my favorite parts when I was a kid. So it's, I know I can't tell you not to do that, but I would not lose that for a heartbeat. It gets pretty sun-cooked over there. I don't have any say in it, so.
I would also like to compliment Aston Properties for their efforts in the last few years. They have recruited, hopefully, marshals, but also they've done a lot of landscaping renovations and other work out there to try and revitalize that shopping center. That's all I have to say.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you very much. At this time, folks, I'm going to request a short recess. Let's come back around 7 o'clock.
Oh, man, I need to bear without.
We'll call it into the recess and start doing our work again. If you will take a seat, thank you so much. Next on our agenda is the Financial Advisor Agreement and Budget Amendment number 11. I'm going to ask our town manager to kick us off.
Okay, thank you. These are actually, what I'm going to go through here, if it's okay, is item 6 and 7. The financial advisory agreement is what's the Carter and Associates are working on to get us to the closing of the special obligation bond, which is item number 7. And then the budget amendment would be kind of a separate part to this. But first, the Carter's financial agreement back in October of 2019, you went under contract with the Carters for, at that time, the agreement was titled Beach Nourishment Protection Project Planning. Now we've gotten to the portion of their planning. They're done planning now, and now they're actually doing the closing. This specific agreement would be the project would be the financing, specifically the financing closing of the project. So the cost for the Carters to walk us through this and get all the ducks in a row to get this special obligation approved through the LGC and through the work with the bond attorney is $30,000. So we're asking for you to approve this amount as it's over our over the amount that I can approve. So I need you to approve this for the planning. And I'll go ahead and explain, if it's okay, the next two parts of this. The resolution, item number 7, the resolution for the special obligation bond, there's this meeting, and then your meeting in October, you'll have to take action to approve the closing. But what this resolution does is it tells the LGC that you're going to make application for a special obligation bond not to exceed $8,100,000 for the beach nourishment project. And what it specifically says is that what you've determined is that the issuance of the 2021 bond is necessary or expedient, that the not to exceed stated principal amount of the 2021 bond will be sufficient but is not excessive when added to other money available to the town for the proposed project, that the proposed project is feasible, that the town's debt management procedure and policies are good, and that the 2021 bond can be marketed as at a reasonable interest cost to the town. And so the third part of this is the budget amendment, which includes this. This is not the budget amendment that was in the packet, but it's for the same dollar amount. What we need you to do is what we had put in your packet was taking the money out of our fund balance to pay for the Carters. And there's actually a $12,500 application fee that we have to pay the local government commission to process this. And so when we put this packet together, we thought we needed to take that out of the general fund to pay for this, but we can actually, and then when we did the borrowing, we would take the money and put it back in the general fund. But we can actually take this out of the capital reserve fund for beach nourishment now and cover this. So that's what this this budget amendment is for. It transfers $45,000 out of the capital reserve. 12,500 of that is for the application, and 32,500 of that is for the Carters. The agreement actually says $30,000, but there's $2,500 in there for incidentals. So, having said all that, I know if you have any questions, but what we're looking for is 3 different motions. 1 to approve the Carters, 1 to approve the resolution for the special obligation bond, and 1 to approve the budget amendment.
The 30,000, should that be 32.5 in that, in the
Yes, sir.
agreement? So will that be changed to 32.5 then?
No, well, that's what's in the budget of,
I mean, it says here for services.
yeah, it says
We'll charge a fee of sum of 30,000, so would it?
plus out-of-pocket expenses, which we've estimated at 2,500.
Okay,
Should not be more than 25, but that will cover it.
okay.
So you need 3 motions from council.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can we do it all in one motion? Never mind. It'd be cleaner just to do it in separate motions.
Yes, sir. Just to be sure. I know it's cumbersome, but just to make sure.
So
Okay.
So I would like to make a motion that we approve the financial advisory agreement between the town and DEC.
And I'll second that.
Any discussion?
I don't have any.
Ready for a vote?
Does this contract include the bond counsel costs or just they're working with the bond counsel?
They're working with the bond counsel.
And they're going to close by the end of October?
The LGC meets the 5th, and the loan will be out there, and I believe we will. We're anticipating, as everyone is, a very low interest rate. The formula, the plan was put together at 3.5%, so we'll be well below that.
Okay.
Ready to vote?
Sure.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We need a motion, let's see, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution 2021-0901.
I'll make a motion to approve initial resolution 2021-0901.
And I'll second. Any discussion about this resolution, council members?
Nope, it's
Nope.
required, so.
Okay. Ready for a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. The last motion we need is to approve budget amendment number 11.
I move that we approve budget number 11 as presented.
You have a
And I'll
second?
second.
Okay. Any discussion about the budget amendment? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. That's 3 motions as requested. Next on the agenda is consideration of Dare County Tourism Impact Grant.
Okay, thank you. What we've been talking about up to this point is making an application to the Tourist Bureau for a tourism impact grant, not to exceed $50,000, so that we can use some of these funds to 2 things. One, to continue to try and figure out the analytics, the data behind what we're wrestling with traffic, and then looking at, there's some yearly expense that we've been paying that maybe we should consider the purchase of some of these barricades and so forth, instead of renting them. Sheila, can you pull up that? There's a map. The streetlight data is, they've submitted us a proposal. What I'm asking for is a grant not to exceed 50, I think it's on page 7, not to exceed $50,000. And I'm still negotiating and working with streetlight data to come up with the right analysis of what we're trying to achieve. I'm sorry, go one more. Another one. That, okay. So what streetlight can do for us is when they're determining where people are coming from and how they're getting to where they're going and what streets of ours they're using to cut through. And Councilman Connors, you mentioned folks coming from the south. If you see that point of origin up there on that map, they'll be able to tell us how many cars are coming from that direction, how many cars are coming from Currituck, or from outside of the county. They'll be able to tell us the cars that, and I forgot, but you'll be able to tell the cars that are cutting on South Dogwood. You'll be able to tell the cars that are cutting on Juniper, all the way up. And so we'll be able to see how many of these cars are making their exit off at 158, back onto 12, or off of 12, back onto 12. There's some really good information in this that goes beyond what we're looking at. And our hope is that the Tourism Bureau may see this as a benefit for them as a whole, because it'll clearly say how many people are coming and where they're coming from and how they're getting there. Right now, we know what the occupancy is, but this will give us a clearer picture of actually where they're originating from. There's two proposals that we're working on. One is that we have access to the data on our own dashboard that we can manipulate. The other is that they do an analysis for us. The periods are from June to August, and they can go back, it'd be really from Memorial Day to Labor Day, but they can go back to 2019 and give us this information. So we're not just starting from now.
Oh, that's good.
It'll look from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. But of course, we can manipulate that to hone in on how many cars are coming at what time. So that there's a lot that we can use this for. The $50,000 is, there's no match required for that. So what I'm asking for is the authority to make the application and incorporate this data. And if you see, because this data it won't cost, there's $30,000 at most to cover, even if they do the analysis, whether or not we should make application also for barricades and traffic cones and the barrels, if that's something we want to consider.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on the tourism grant application?
The front part, I did talk to Lee this morning about this, and he felt we should move forward with what we're proposing. They are also looking at another provider, but I think maybe if he's interested in looking at what we may have, and maybe we can collaborate with the tourism board. At the last meeting, I did bring up the traffic issue, and at that point in time, that's when Monica chimed in that Duck is finally realizing they got an issue too. So we got it on the table. There was some discussion about incenting either the guest or the rental properties to change some of their scheduling to like Thursday. However, the current model is their cleaners work Monday through Friday. So if you start manipulating times of people coming, it has an impact on their ability to clean the facility. So got a little education on that part of it, but it is on the table. I think we'll finally maybe get some assistance, but he indicated to me to go ahead and approve our resolution and move forward to where we can submit our application here in September. Now it's a matter of, do we want to buy barrels, rent barrels, or the barricades? That's another story.
What I should add that I didn't, the data that we get now, the counters that we get now tell us how many cars are going past that point. This information will tell us, not only verify the number of cars that are going, but their pattern, their movement in going past that. So we already know how many cars are going down South Dogwood. This will tell us where they came from. It'll tell us if they're in county, if they're out of county, so we can kind of start to, how much of this is a tourist problem versus local education. It'll even tell us the weight of some of these vehicles. It'll tell us whether they're commercial, big trucks.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, there's all kinds of information that we can use to supplement what we already have. So
I think that's a good thing to have, is the weight and type of vehicle as much as possible, because as I've noticed this year, there's a boatload of RV trailers and tow-behind trailers that are passing through town. And when they're going to Corolla, I'm unaware of any campgrounds up there. So it's just kind of a curiosity so far to me, which makes me think that they're taking one house and jamming more people into it by taking that tow behind trailer or RV up there. So the population, you know, if you do 4 people per car, for example, that may be greatly increased by the number of people that are using this. But, and I'm sorry, Cliff, this has nothing to do with your presentation, but I'm just reacting to that comment, the type of vehicles that will go up there. That'll be tracked, I mean.
Well, generally speaking, it seems to me this grant application would be for the town to get some resources to deal with the impact of tourism.
Yep.
And whether it's, and so I'd like to see the tourism board support the town in our efforts to try to mitigate some of these negative impacts of tourism. So I also like the idea of this particular effort, because I think we've raised this issue to the radar screen of the tourism board, possibly the county commissioners, and thankfully our friends in Duck. So the more we continue to do this, I think the more data we get, the more information we get, I think the better off we are in trying to make our case for, let's see if we can get some more people to check in on Friday and Sunday rather than Saturday.
Yeah, well, Saturday and Sunday is not the issue. If you try moving it to, say, Thursday, that's where, and Monica has indicated she's moved a lot to Friday in their business model. But there is, if you get them all moving too much, then they have problems with their cleaners because they work other jobs. But what I will say is we have shared at our board meetings the numbers that Chief Cole provides us weekly. So there's a different understanding at the tourism board now than there was 6 months ago. Now, this process will apply for it, but the grant committee is the one that will decide then as to what. Then it'll eventually come to the full board, and I'm not on the grant committee, but it does come to full board. That's where I'll probably put my 50 cents worth in. And then from there, the county commissioners have to approve our expenditure.
I
So
think
that'll be
also
the
that
process.
we're not the only ones trying to collect data on this subject either, because I have seen and then also read about your end of week reports, Cliff, about how Duck is trying to analyze their traffic patterns up there, in particular with the pedestrian crosswalks. There are at least 13 pedestrian crosswalks in Duck, just in a 2-mile stretch. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that that's a big part of our problem down here. But I think it's also important to note that Duck is looking at that also. And hopefully, I know that Cliff will do this because he's a top-notch professional, but he'll be coordinating with Duck and trying to come up with a traffic management plan in the future.
That's all I got.
Anything?
Do you need any clarification in the motion to do the traffic management techniques, like the barrels and all that stuff, and the streetlights data? I mean, is the motion just to apply for a grant blanket? I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure if we needed to give any specific instruction, because I'd say go all in for everything. And if that's the case, I would make a motion to authorize the town manager to apply for a Dare County Tourism Board Tourism Impact Grant.
And I'll second it.
Any further discussion, council members?
Nope.
Time for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. I would like to hope that by the next time the tourism impact or tourism grants come around, maybe we'll be to the point of additional walking paths.
Yeah.
Let's hope so.
I'm glad you said that, because the folks that spoke tonight are just one of a lot that have said to me, kind of the underlying theme of this traffic is we need more paths.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've heard that over and over
We
again.
need to make it safer for people to walk around.
That's right.
So, okay. Next on the agenda is
Brick.
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 Thank you. This item we've discussed in the past as well. This is the Building Resiliency Infrastructure and Communities Grant that's housed under FEMA. The way this works is the North Carolina Department of Emergency Management it's actually who we make our first application to. And there's two pots of money that they're responsible for, and they get to decide whether we go to the brick pot of money or whether we go to another flooding pot of money, a flooding, like a hazard mitigation fund. There's two different funds set up for this. But that's based on a kind of a competitive process. So we could get funded at $600,000 at the state level, or they could say this application looks good for brick, we'll send it there. This application looks good for the hazard mitigation, we'll send it there. But what I'm asking for is to be able to contract with VHB Engineering to put this application together. When we made application for this last year, it became pretty clear that there was a little bit of planning and some things ahead of time that we weren't prepared. We didn't have that information, and we needed someone to help us with that. And so we didn't get past a letter of interest. Our letter of interest was approved. It was kind of green lighted, but we couldn't get beyond that point. And VHB, as you know, they're actually the ones doing the Crosswalk study for Duck now, but they're also have experience with this grant because they're the ones that put together the application for Duck for the stormwater project that they're doing, I think at Sunset Grill, to help with the road there. And so I reached out to them because of their familiarity. They've given us a proposal. When it first started this last year, we were really just talking about, or I was talking about, Duck Road at the 12th and 13th area as one of the, I think, 5 places that were identified in a study that they did years ago. But when we had a conversation with some of the state grant folks, they told us apply for all of the elements in that project. And you'll see all the areas that are identified. So the application would include 5 areas above what I just said. There were 6 in the study, but Joe did the project at East Dogwood that they identified, but Joe designed and built that, and that was one of the projects. So the other 5 are at Southern Shores Realty, at Skyline Road, Ocean Boulevard and Duck Road Split, 4th Avenue, and Sea Oaks Trail. There's $25,000 to put this application together. But that'll take us to the point where then it'll kind of end. If we were awarded, we'd have to move forward with the design and implementation, all that. So that'd be another, I'd come back to you with that. The way this grant's structured is if we don't get past the letter of interest, and I feel like we will, then it's not going to be anywhere near the 25,000. But what I'm asking for is the authority to sign this agreement with VHB for y'all to allow to approve the budget adjustment, budget amendment number 12 for 25,000. That does come out of the general fund. Some of these costs could be recouped. I don't know how many, but some of these costs could be recouped through the grant. So we might be able to pay ourselves back for some of this. But if you're inclined, I'd need a motion to approve the budget amendment, and authorize me to sign the agreement with VHB.
Before we go there, some of this activity is on Highway 12, which is NC DOT. Do they play anywhere into this?
Yeah, they'll have to, this is going to sound bad, but I'm sure they will welcome someone else's money to fix a flooding problem in their right.
Well, are they going to play in it any? Are they going to put any money in this skin in this game, or are we the ones going to have it all?
The hope would be that they would, recognizing that it's a flooding problem in their street.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they will. Once we get to that point where we're designing a project. And
Okay.
and this, I'm glad you said that, because there is a match with this. There's a 25% match. And so there'll be a point at which you all can determine, hey, wait a minute, when you told us you're applying for a grant, you didn't tell us it was going to be $1 million project, and we've got to put the 25% of that in. So at that time, I'll hopefully have a better understanding. I can give you a clear picture whether or not DOT is going to put any money in this project.
Okay.
Is the grant eligible for ARPA?
It's not, but that's, as you know, we have potentially $970,000 in ARP funding that we could, if this doesn't work, those funds could apply to this, but we can't use them as a match. We can't use federal money to match
Can't
federal
use them to
money.
match them for the.
But if this doesn't
We can't stack it.
come to fruition, then we
We could
could
do something different.
we could use those funds in lieu of. And I've had that conversation with them.
And I'm sorry if I missed it. Is there a state fund for?
Yes.
And
The BRIC gives a certain amount that states can allocate. And I believe it's $600,000. But if they will push some grants past that, more competitive, and you're eligible for $1 million or more. So they're kind of the clearinghouse, I guess. They get to decide who proceeds and how they proceed.
so, but they are distributing federal money, not state money?
Correct.
Okay.
They're a pass-through.
So there is no state fund for these kinds of projects that you're aware of?
No, they're just serving as the pass-through.
Pass through. Gotcha. Okay.
Very
Seems
good.
like that might be a good way for the General Assembly to use some of that big surplus they're sitting on.
That's right.
Yet another good reason. Okay. I'm sorry. Anybody else?
The sticky question is, if we do not get past the letter of intent, can you ballpark our expenditure? If you can't, that's okay.
Well, I can't. Thank you for that out.
I understand.
There needs to be a little bit more study on that, Matt.
We'll get back to you.
Well, I mean, no, it's not something research will answer, I don't think. All right, but they will cease this contract if that
That's
letter of
right.
intent's denied. Okay. I'll make a motion to authorize, or is it the budget amendment?
Yeah. Motion to approve the budget
Motion.
amendment.
I was going to
Budget
direct you to do something, but I'd rather just make a motion to approve the budget amendment number 12.
And I'll second it.
You want to include the and authorize the town manager to,
It's implied,
okay.
but
If
I
you
will
say so.
include that for you.
Okay.
And authorize the town manager to proceed with a grant application with VHB for our stormwater needs.
It's a motion. That's a second. Any further discussion?
Nope. I don't have any.
Time for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4 ayes. Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you, Cliff. All right, we're down to
Second
Elizabeth's comments.
general public comments.
Anybody?
Anybody else want
Is
to talk
anybody
to us
over there?
tonight?
Anybody signed up? Nobody signed up.
Okay.
Come on. We're early.
So, let's see, before we do council comments, just want to make sure the next meeting is when, Cliff, for the council?
November 9.
We're not having a second workshop meeting in September? Is that what you're saying to us?
I don't have any pressing need for you to do that. The one thing that's really hanging over is the SEPI report.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still, wanting to put together what we think you're looking for as far as the maintenance and the construction at the same time. We could have that.
Do you think you might have that by the 2 weeks from today?
We could have it in at least a format to have the discussion for your input to make sure that we're on the right track. But that would be
the only item we would have.
That's a pretty big one.
It is.
I don't want to rush it.
I'm good with the 5th.
You want to hold off until October?
Yeah,
Jim?
Yeah, I'm for that.
yeah, let's hold off in October.
Okay, so our next meeting will be the first Tuesday in October?
Okay.
Okay. And hopefully we'll
Which
be
is the
talking
5th.
about October 5th. Hopefully
Yeah.
we'll be talking about roads. Okay. So we got when the next meeting is. So now it's time for council comments. Leo?
Just update you on occupancy collections. This is for June. June's was up 24%. Current year to date is up 103%. And the thing you got to remember on that, last year number was 103 million and this year it's 127. So it's still that was higher than what was in 2019. And the food meals collection, June is up 37%, and current year to date is up 88%. Last year at this time in June was 35 million, and this year it's 48 million. So the numbers are still going, although I do know the meals group are the infrastructure. That's very challenging right at this point in time. So where we are in June. So we're still collecting money.
Okay. Matt?
I felt a little sad that Sergeant Farrow was in our consent agenda, so I just want to tell him thank you for his service. Please pass it on. I said it to the chief earlier. I'll say it publicly.
I'll have him here. The reason I didn't is he's still working. He needs his gun. So, but I promised the mayor that he would be able we'll do a presentation
Okay,
with
good.
him at one of the council meetings. Just not sure when yet. So thank you though.
Thanks, Stu. Jim?
Couple quick things. One of them is an update on the Monarch Butterfly Way. As I've stated before, we're heading toward a late October planting. We've got under contract with a wetland plant nursery to purchase 3,000 plants. So that's on target. The SSEA, I had a meeting with them recently, and they have approved our request, the town's request, to use some of their properties to plant these milkweeds. So there's still a lot of work going on behind the scenes on that, but I think it's going to be a successful planting. We're also looking at using some of the town property, like at the basin of the retention ponds and things like that. Second item I have, and I only have three. The second item is I have a GAC, Government Education Access Channel meeting the third week of September. The date is eluding me right now because 2 weeks from now is a long 2-3 weeks away from now is a lifetime away right now. But I'll be coordinating with Sheila to make sure I'm representing the town properly on that. The third item is an odd item. Because of my involvement with Room at the Inn and the homeless people through the All Saints Church, I attended an all-day seminar on mental health first aid. It's just a tool to help identify people that may have, the way I put it, they're dealing with 51 cards, maybe 50. And it's not to diagnose or treat them, it's to recognize that there may be a problem and provide them with resources. I wish I'd taken that course 3 years ago when I got up here on council. But anyway, that's all I have.
Thanks, Jim. I would just like to end the evening by saying thank you all for coming, and I hope that Mayor Bennett is back next meeting, And I hope that everybody continues to stay safe. That silly, dangerous virus is still out there, and we all need to take it seriously. So please stay safe.
I move we adjourn.
Move we adjourned.
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.